My ex-husband's mother dropped her Thanksgiving plate the moment she saw my son. Not because Noah was screaming, not because he had tracked rainwater across her antique hardwood floors, although, honestly, he did. A tiny muddy betrayal in dinosaur sneakers. She dropped it because my 4-year-old looked up at the framed photo on her dining room wall, tugged on his left ear, and asked, "Mommy, why is that boy wearing my face?" The plate hit the floor before anyone breathed. White china shattered across the polished wood. Turkey, green beans, and cranberry sauce slid into the cracks like the whole Whitmore family's secret had finally decided to dress for dinner. I stood in the doorway of Eleanor Whitmore's Charleston house with one hand on Noah's damp shoulder and the other clutching my coat like fabric could keep me from falling apart. Across the dining room, Grant stood up so fast his chair scraped backward. My ex-husband, the man who left me 4 years earlier to go back to his ex-wife, the man who heard me say, "I'm pregnant," and answered like I had just tried to sell him a timeshare in hell. "Emily, don't do this." That sentence had lived in my bones for 4 years. Now Grant was staring at Noah like the past had walked in wearing a blue sweater and wet socks. Beside him, Sloane went perfectly still. She had one of those faces that looked expensive even when afraid. Smooth hair, soft lipstick, thin gold bracelet. The kind of woman who could destroy your life and still remember to send a thank you note to the caterer. "This is inappropriate," she said. Of course it was. My son existing in the dining room was rude, very poor manners. Somebody alert Southern living. I had not planned to come inside. That was the part I wanted to scream at all of them. I had driven from Atlanta to Charleston because Thomas Whitmore, Grant's father, had written me a letter in shaky blue ink saying he was sick, sorry, and running out of time. He had been the only Whitmore who ever asked me if I wanted coffee without making it sound like a citizenship test. I came to say goodbye. That was it. I did not come to donate my child to a family scandal buffet. But then the rain got ugly. Jenna's car started making a noise that sounded financially threatening. Noah stepped into a puddle deep enough to qualify as a small pond, and Eleanor Whitmore, in a dark green dress and pearl earrings, opened the front door and said, "For heaven's sake, Emily, bring the child in before he catches pneumonia." So I did. One stupid human mistake. I brought him in. Jenna came in behind us carrying a tote bag full of snacks, wipes, and emotional backup. She took one look at the dining room, then leaned toward me and whispered, "I should have brought holy water." I almost laughed. Almost. Then Noah saw the photo. It hung above the sideboard between 2 silver candlesticks. Grant at 4 years old, sitting on a porch step in a navy sweater, dark curls falling over his forehead, one hand pulling his left ear. His little mouth was twisted in the exact same serious, offended expression Noah made whenever I told him waffles were not a food group. Noah pointed at it. "Mommy," he said louder this time, because children are tiny public address systems with no legal department. "Is that me?" Eleanor made a sound, small, broken. Then the plate fell. For a second, nobody moved. The house smelled like roasted turkey, butter, old wood, and sudden ruin. Rain tapped against the tall windows. Somewhere in the kitchen a timer kept beeping because apparently even appliances wanted answers. Grant's eyes moved from the photograph to Noah, then to me. His face lost color in pieces. "Emily," he said. Noah pressed closer to my leg, his little fingers twisted into my coat. "Mommy, did I do bad?" That snapped me back. I crouched beside him, careful not to touch the broken china. My knees cracked because motherhood had made me both emotionally durable and physically 76. "No, baby," I said. "You didn't do anything bad." Sloane laughed once, sharp and fake. "This is absurd. Children resemble people all the time." Jenna looked at the photo, then at Noah, then at Sloane. "Sure," she said. "Charleston is famous for accidental clone children." Sloane's eyes cut to her. Grant didn't defend Sloane. That was new, but I had learned not to mistake silence for courage. Eleanor stepped closer to Noah. Her hand trembled near her pearls. She didn't touch him. I noticed that. Some part of her still had manners left. "How old is he?" she asked. The question landed like a glass dropped into a sink. Grant swallowed. "Mother?" Eleanor didn't look at him. Her eyes stayed on Noah's face. "How old, Emily?" I stood slowly. My mouth went dry. I had imagined this moment in ugly ways over the years. In courtrooms, in parking lots, in grocery store aisles while choosing apples like a normal woman whose life had not been folded wrong. But not here. Not under a chandelier. Not with mashed potatoes cooling on heirloom plates and my son wearing one wet sock. He turned 4 in August, I said. Grant closed his eyes. Sloane whispered no. Eleanor turned toward her son then, not toward me, toward Grant. The room seemed to shrink around him. Grant, she said, very softly, how old was this child when you left Emily? He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. I looked down and saw cranberry sauce on a shard of broken china near my shoe. Bright red, ridiculous, like the plate was bleeding for a family that had spent years pretending it was spotless. Then, from the hallway behind the dining room, Thomas Whitmore's weak voice called out, "Bring the boy here." And that was when I realized the plate was not the only thing in that house about to break. 4 years earlier, Grant left me on a Tuesday. I remember that because Tuesday is a stupid day to ruin someone's life. Mondays have the decency to already be terrible. Fridays at least give you the weekend to collapse. But Tuesday? Tuesday is when you're supposed to buy toothpaste, answer emails, and pretend your laundry situation is not legally concerning. We were living in Atlanta then, in a brick townhouse near Virginia Highland, with a front step that collected leaves and a dishwasher that sounded like it was full of forks and unresolved anger. Our marriage had been tired for months. Not dead. Tired. There is a difference, although men like Grant often call anything requiring effort toxic, if another woman is waiting with softer lighting. Sloane had come back into his life that spring. At first, she was a practical problem. That was how he introduced it. His ex-wife needed help sorting out an old property issue from their divorce. There were documents, tax complications, something about a beach house her second husband wanted to sell. I didn't understand all of it, mostly because Grant explained it with the confidence of a man, hoping I would get bored before I got suspicious. "She doesn't have anyone else who understands the numbers," he said one night while rinsing his coffee mug. I was standing at the counter peeling an orange with my thumb because I had been nauseous for 3 days and apparently citrus was my new religion. "She had a whole second husband," I said. "Did he not come with numbers?" Grant sighed. That sigh became a language in our house. It meant I was being unreasonable. It meant he was tired. It meant Sloane was calm and I was difficult, although nobody had officially printed the brochure yet. Then his phone started living face down. Then he laughed in the hallway with the bedroom door closed. Then he changed his cologne. That one almost embarrassed me. Who notices cologne during a marriage collapse? Me, apparently. Very dignified. Very detective with a migraine. One evening I found him in the kitchen texting while our dinner went cold. I had made salmon. Too much lemon, not enough salt. I still remember that, which annoys me more than the betrayal some days. My brain saved the salmon. "Are you in love with her again?" I asked. Grant looked up slowly. Not guilty. Insulted. That was worse. "Emily," he said, "I can't keep living under interrogation." It was one question. "It's always something with you." I looked at the pan on the stove. The lemon sauce had separated. I wanted to fix it. Isn't that pathetic? My husband was emotionally packing a suitcase, and I was worried about sauce. "I'm asking because you're disappearing in front of me," I said. He rubbed both hands over his face. Maybe I disappeared because this marriage stopped feeling like home. There it was. The line people use when they want to sound wounded while holding the match. 2 nights later, I bought a pregnancy test at a CVS on Ponce de Leon because my period was late and I had thrown up after smelling roasted garlic. The cashier asked if I wanted a bag. I said no, like a hero, then immediately dropped the box in the parking lot and had to chase it under a parked Jeep. A woman watched me crawl halfway under the bumper. I smiled at her. She looked away. Excellent. Motherhood was already glamorous. At home, I took the test and set it on the sink. Then I stared at the shower curtain because I was too scared to look down. The curtain had tiny blue flowers on it. I hated that curtain. Grant had liked it because it was cheerful. Cheerful fabric. Suspicious concept. When I finally looked, there were 2 lines. Clear, fast. No room for negotiation. I sat on the bathroom floor with the test in my hand and laughed once. Not because it was funny, because my body had apparently chosen the worst possible moment to become poetic. I wanted to tell Grant in person. I really did. But he came home late that night with rain on his shoulders and a duffel bag in his hand. A black one. I remember the zipper was broken near the side pocket. I had told him to replace it for months. Naturally, that bag was functional enough to carry my marriage out the door. "I'm staying at Sloane's for a while," he said. My hand closed around the edge of the kitchen counter. "You're what?" "I need space." I looked at the duffel. "Space has a monogram now?" His jaw tightened. "Don't do that." "Do what, Grant? Notice reality?" He said he was confused. He said Sloane understood parts of him I didn't. He said we had become heavy. Heavy. I had been carrying nausea, fear, and a secret the size of a heartbeat. But sure, poor Grant. Crushed by the emotional weight of being asked where he was at midnight. I almost told him then. The words were right there, "I'm pregnant." But he looked so ready to leave, so cleanly decided. And some bitter, stupid part of me wanted one more second before my child became an argument. So I let him walk out. Then I called him 20 minutes later. He didn't answer. I called again. Nothing. On the third call, he picked up. Behind him, I heard Sloane's voice. Soft, close. "Grant?" My stomach turned, and not from the pregnancy. "I need to tell you something," I said. He exhaled. "Emily, not tonight. I'm pregnant." Silence. Long enough for hope to stand up. Long enough for it to make a fool of itself. Then Grant said very quietly, "Emily, don't do this." I blinked at the wall. A cereal box sat open on the counter. Honey Nut Cheerios. The inner bag was folded wrong. That is what I remember. Not my exact words after. Not whether I cried right away. The cereal bag. "What?" I said. "Don't use this to pull me back." My body went cold in a way I didn't know bodies could. "I'm not using anything. I took a test. Sloane said you might try something like this. There are sentences that don't stab you. They rearrange you." I stood there barefoot on my kitchen tile, while the father of my child told me another woman had prepared him not to believe me. "Grant," I said, and my voice came out small. "I hated that. This is real." He didn't say, "Are you okay?" He didn't say, "I'm coming over." He said, "We'll talk when everyone is calmer." Everyone. As if my uterus had formed a committee. The next morning, an email arrived from his attorney. All communication regarding marital separation should proceed through counsel. No mention of the baby. No call. No question. No courage. I printed the email because I thought I might need it someday, then spilled coffee on the bottom corner because apparently even my evidence had to look tired. For 2 weeks, I tried anyway. I sent him a picture of the test. I left one voicemail after my first doctor's appointment. I wrote one letter and never mailed it because I read it back and realized it sounded like begging dressed in good grammar. Then I stopped. Not because I was strong. Because one morning I threw up in the kitchen sink, sat down on the floor, and understood that my baby could not survive on my hope that Grant would become decent by sunset. So I chose Noah before I knew his name. I chose silence, but not the weak kind, the kind with a locked door, the kind that says, "You had your chance to hear me," when I was still asking nicely. And you didn't. Noah was born in August during a thunderstorm, dramatic enough to make the nurses roll their eyes at the sky. I did not have a cinematic labor. There was no soft music, no husband crying beside me, no gentle hand on my forehead whispering, "You're doing amazing." There was Jenna, wearing mismatched socks, eating vending machine pretzels like she was fueling for war, and telling a nurse named Malcolm that if he said, "Just breathe," one more time, she would file a complaint with his ancestors. To be fair, Malcolm was very nice. To be more fair, I was trying to push a human being out of my body, while my ex-husband was probably drinking wine with Sloane somewhere, explaining to people that our divorce had been complicated. Complicated is a beautiful word. It makes cowardice sound upholstered. When Noah finally arrived, he screamed so hard the doctor laughed. "Strong lungs," she said. I remember looking down at him on my chest, red-faced and furious, one tiny fist tucked under his chin like he was already judging the hospital administration. Hi. That was all I had. Not a speech. Not a prayer. Just hi. Then I cried so hard Jenna cried, and then she got mad that she was crying and blamed the fluorescent lighting. I put my last name on his birth certificate, Noah Carter. The nurse asked twice, because divorce paperwork and hospital forms apparently enjoy holding hands in hell. "Father's information?" she asked gently. I stared at the blank line. My hand shook. Not because I was unsure. Because blanks can be loud. Leave it blank, I said. Jenna squeezed my shoulder. Later, when Noah was asleep in the plastic bassinet beside me, I took a photo of his face. His dark curls were damp against his forehead. His mouth had that little serious curve, like the world had already disappointed him. For one stupid second, I almost sent it to Grant. Look, he's real. I typed the message, I deleted it, then I typed it again. Then I put the phone face down on the hospital tray and ate lime gelatin with a plastic spoon, because apparently dignity and postpartum hunger have never met. I did not send the photo. That choice did not feel powerful. It felt like chewing glass. People love telling women to be strong, as if strength arrives with clean hair and a theme song. Mine arrived wearing mesh underwear, holding an ice pack, and wondering if I had remembered to pay the electric bill. The first months were not inspirational. They were leaking milk through a work blouse. They were waking up at 2:13 a.m., convinced Noah had stopped breathing, only to find him sleeping peacefully like a tiny retired man. They were microwaving coffee 4 times and drinking it cold anyway. They were crying in the grocery store because I could not decide between 2 brands of diapers, and somehow that became proof I was failing at motherhood, womanhood, and basic consumer decision-making. Jenna helped. She came over with casseroles she did not cook, because Jenna believed emotional support was sacred, but culinary honesty was optional. My aunt made this, she said one night, handing me a foil pan. Which aunt? The one named Whole Foods. I laughed while holding Noah against my shoulder. He spit up down my shirt, like he disapproved of processed comfort. I went back to work when he was 10 weeks old. Too soon. Not soon enough. There is no correct answer when money is standing in the kitchen with its arms crossed. I worked events for a small private art museum in Midtown Atlanta, arranging donor dinners under white lights, smiling at people who said things like, "We adore accessibility," while mispronouncing the names of half the artists. I carried a pump bag into staff bathrooms and once accidentally walked into a meeting with a burp cloth stuck to the back of my black blazer. My boss pointed at it. I said, "New textile installation." She stared for 1 second, then laughed. I kept the job. Noah grew into a child with wild curls, serious eyes, and questions that could ruin a peaceful morning. Why do birds not need shoes? Why is Tuesday real? Why does that man at the store have daddy hair? I always answered carefully. I never lied and said Grant was dead. That felt too easy, and also Grant did not deserve that kind of narrative closure. I said, "Your father lives in Charleston." Noah asked, "Does he have snacks?" I said, "Probably." He nodded like that explained the entire male species. Grant did not reach out. Not once. His attorney sent documents. There were signatures, dates, asset divisions, clean little paragraphs pretending a marriage could be folded into legal language and filed away. Eleanor sent 1 card after the divorce finalized. Cream stationery, heavy paper, perfect handwriting. Wishing you peace in your next chapter. No mention of my pregnancy. No mention of the child she did not know existed. I kept the card in a shoebox, not because it meant anything, but because sometimes proof of people's distance is useful. Also because I was too tired to organize my drawers. 4 years passed that way. Not smoothly, not tragically every day. Just life. Noah learned to walk holding a wooden spoon. He went through a phase where he would only answer to Captain Noodle. He once cried for 20 minutes because I would not let him bring a worm into Target. I loved him so much it made me unreasonable. Then, 3 weeks before Thanksgiving, an envelope arrived, no return address on the front. But I recognized the handwriting before I opened it. Thomas Whitmore. The letter was written in blue ink, shaky in places, like his hand had argued with every word. "Emily, I do not know if I have the right to ask anything of you. I suspect I lost that right when I stayed quiet. I have been unwell. The doctors say recovery is possible, but they are careful when they say it, and careful men frighten me. I would like to see you if you are willing. There are things I should have said years ago. I read it 3 times. The 3rd time, Noah was at the kitchen table eating cereal with a fork because all our spoons were in the dishwasher. He looked up and said, "Mommy, why is your face doing that?" I folded the letter. "My face is thinking." "Is it thinking bad?" "A little." He nodded wisely and went back to stabbing Cheerios. I called Jenna. She answered with, "Tell me nobody died unless we hated them." Thomas Whitmore wrote me. Silence. Then I'm putting on shoes. Jenna, you don't know why yet. I heard Whitmore. My feet understood. I should have thrown the letter away. A cleaner version of me would have. A woman with better boundaries and less unfinished grief would have put it in the trash, taken Noah to the park, and let the past rot politely in Charleston. Instead, I read it again that night after Noah fell asleep. There are things I should have said years ago. That sentence kept breathing on the page. So I packed one suitcase, Noah's blue sweater, 2 dinosaur toys, and a pack of fruit snacks because I am many things. But I am not a fool. I told myself we would go to Charleston for one afternoon. One conversation, one goodbye. Then we would come home. That was the plan. Plans are adorable. After Eleanor dropped the plate, the dining room became so quiet I could hear rain sliding down the window glass. It is strange what silence does in a room full of rich people. Poor people get loud when disaster arrives. We ask questions. We knock over chairs. We call cousins. Rich families go still, like if nobody moves, the scandal might mistake them for furniture. Noah was pressed against my leg, staring at the broken china with huge eyes. A smear of rainwater darkened the knee of his pants. One sock had slipped halfway off his heel. I wanted to fix it, which was absurd. The Whitmore family had just recognized my son as a walking bloodline emergency, and my brain said, suck. Motherhood is mostly triage performed by an exhausted squirrel. Eleanor finally bent down. I moved before she could touch the broken pieces. Don't, I said. Her eyes lifted to mine. It's sharp. She stopped. That was the first time Eleanor Whitmore obeyed me. Jenna crouched beside Noah and handed him a dinosaur gummy from her coat pocket. Emergency Stegosaurus, she whispered. Noah took it solemnly. Sloane set her wine glass down with a tiny click. This is getting theatrical. I looked at her. She looked beautiful. Perfect. Uncreased. Her cream blouse probably had a name I couldn't afford to pronounce. My hair was frizzing from the rain, my right boot was making a wet squeak every time I shifted, and I had a granola bar wrapper in my coat pocket sticking to my fingers. Naturally, she still looked more frightened than I did. Grant walked around the table slowly. Noah, he said. My son leaned back. I put one hand across Noah's chest, not dramatically, just enough. Grant saw it and stopped. Good. Some men learn boundaries only when they become physical objects. Emily, he said. Why didn't you tell me? I laughed, not because anything was funny, because the sentence was so ugly it needed air around it. The laugh came out wrong, small and sharp. Jenna glanced at me like she was ready to either support me or hide a body. With Jenna, the line was always flexible. I did tell you, I said. Grant's face tightened. No, Sloane said quickly. No, she didn't. Nobody had asked her. That was how I knew she was scared. Eleanor turned her head. Sloane's mouth softened. Eleanor, please, you cannot let this woman walk in after 4 years and rewrite history because her child has dark hair. Jenna raised one finger. And the face. Sloane ignored her. And the ear thing, Jenna added. Noah very helpfully tugged his left ear again. Grant stared. Behind him on the wall, the photo of 4-year-old Grant seemed to stare back. Same dark curls, same narrow chin, same offended little mouth. One of Grant's aunts, a thin woman with silver hair and pearls the size of small debts, whispered, Good Lord, that is Grant's chin. Her husband muttered, Marjorie. What? She hissed. We all have eyes. I liked Marjorie immediately and against my better judgment. Eleanor walked to the wall. Her steps were careful as if the floor had become ice. She lifted the framed photograph from its hook and held it in both hands. For a moment, she was not the polished matriarch who had once corrected the way I set a salad fork. She was just a mother looking at the face of her son twice. Once in a frame. Once breathing by my knee. How old is he again? She asked. I hated answering twice. I hated that my son's age had become an accusation. I hated that part of me still wanted Grant to look devastated enough for it to count. He turned 4 in August, Grant whispered. August. Sloane's jaw moved like she was grinding glass. Eleanor looked at him. Grant? His throat worked. I don't know, he said. That was Grant. Not I did wrong. Not I remember. Not I chose not to believe her. Just I don't know. The phrase men use when the truth is standing close enough to touch, but they would rather pretend it is fog. I took a breath. The house smelled like butter, cinnamon, and old money, trying not to panic. I called you the night you left, I said. Grant flinched. That was answer enough for me, but not for the room. You answered on the third call, I continued. Sloane was there? I told you I was pregnant? Eleanor's face changed. Sloane said, that is not what happened. I looked at her. You were in the room? Her lips parted. Too fast, too revealing. Jenna made a soft sound. Oops. Grant looked at Sloane then, really looked. I had imagined that look for years. I thought it would satisfy me. It didn't. It felt like watching a man arrive late to his own house fire and ask who smelled smoke. Sloane straightened. Grant told me she was unstable. He said she would say anything. Grant said nothing. I looked at him. Tell them I didn't call. He blinked. Go ahead, I said. Say I never told you. The room waited. Rain beat harder against the windows. Noah whispered, Mommy, can we go home? My heart cracked in the most practical way. Yes, I said softly, soon. Grant's eyes filled, but I had no room for his tears. My son wanted home. That mattered more than a grown man discovering consequences under candlelight. Then Thomas's voice came again from the hallway, weak, impatient. Grant, stop standing there like a fool and bring Emily to me. Nobody moved. Then Thomas coughed, hard enough that a nurse appeared at the far doorway, alarmed. Eleanor clutched the photo to her chest. Sloane whispered, this is a mistake. I looked down at Noah. He had cranberry sauce on the toe of one dinosaur sneaker. I have no idea how. Children find sauces like detectives find motive. I wiped it with my thumb. Then I stood. No, I said, mostly to myself. The mistake was 4 years ago. I took Noah's hand and walked toward the hallway. Behind me, Grant followed. For once, I did not turn around to see if Sloane came too. Thomas Whitmore looked smaller than I remembered. That was the first cool thing I noticed. Not his gray skin, not the oxygen tube resting under his nose, not the blanket tucked carefully around his legs in a wingback chair that probably cost more than my first car. Small. Thomas had always been tall to me, even when sitting. Tall in the way old Southern men can be, with their careful manners and expensive guilt. He used to stand when I entered a room. He once told Grant, a woman does not become family by asking permission from people already seated. I had liked him for that. Then he had stayed silent when Grant left. Liking people becomes complicated when they disappoint you with good posture. He was in a library off the main hall, surrounded by dark shelves, brass lamps, leather chairs, and the smell of old paper. A fire cracked softly in the fireplace. Very cozy. Very generational wealth with respiratory equipment. Noah peeked from behind my coat. Thomas looked at him. Everything in his face broke open. Oh, he whispered. Just that. Oh, he did not ask if Noah was Grant's. He did not demand proof. He did not perform shock for the room. He looked at my son like the answer had been waiting in his bones. Noah looked back with the cautious interest he usually reserved for large dogs and men who offered high fives too soon. Thomas smiled weakly. Hello there. Noah glanced at me. I nodded. Hi, Noah said. Thomas's voice trembled. Do you like dinosaurs? Noah stepped out 1 inch. Yes. Which one? The angry one that still eats plants sometimes. Thomas blinked. Jenna, behind me, whispered, that tracks. A tiny laugh escaped Thomas and turned into a cough. The nurse moved toward him, but he lifted a hand. I'm all right, he said, which was obviously a lie, but old men and toddlers are both famous for rejecting medical reality. Eleanor entered behind us, still holding the framed photo of Grant as a boy. Grant stood near the door, pale and useless. Sloane hovered behind him, visibly furious that illness had stolen the spotlight from her control. Thomas's eyes moved from Noah to Grant. You fool, he said. It was quiet, almost gentle. Somehow that made it worse. Grant lowered his head. Sloane stepped forward. Thomas, you are unwell. This is not the time for accusations. He looked at her. Sloane, I have been unwell. I have not been dead. Her mouth snapped shut. I felt Jenna shift behind me in pure admiration. Thomas turned back to me. Emily, I owe you an apology. My throat tightened. I hated that. I had trained myself not to need apologies from Whitmore's. Then one appeared in a library with firelight on its hands, and my body acted like a stray dog hearing its old name. You don't have to do this, I said. Yes, he said. I do. He took a slow breath. His fingers gripped the blanket. 4 years ago, I heard Grant and Sloane arguing after your call. I did not hear every word, but I heard enough. Grant looked up. Eleanor turned sharply. Thomas? He nodded, still looking at me. I asked him if there was a possibility. He told me you were trying to manipulate him. I asked if he was certain. He became angry. Sloane told me I was making it worse. Sloane's face hardened. You were. No, Thomas said. I was close to being useful. Then I stopped. The sentence went through me strangely. No excuses, no embroidered version. Just a man naming his own cowardice without asking me to decorate it. I told myself it was not my marriage, Thomas continued. I told myself grown people make their own wreckage. I told myself if there had been a child, surely someone would have told us officially. He coughed again. The nurse stepped closer. He waved her back with the stubborn dignity of a man determined to finish bleeding truth before dinner. I was wrong, he said, and my wrongness had a child's face. Noah was now investigating a brass magnifying glass on the side table. He looked up. Mommy, can I touch this? No, baby. Thomas smiled faintly. He may. I hesitated, then nodded. Noah picked it up with both hands and held it over his own fingers, gasping when they looked huge. Whoa. The room almost softened, almost. Then Grant said, Dad, why didn't you tell me? I turned slowly. Jenna whispered, bold choice. Thomas stared at his son. I did, he said. You chose comfort over conscience. Grant swallowed. Sloane's voice sliced in. This is cruel. Grant was heartbroken. Emily knew that. She knew exactly how to use timing. I looked at her, and for a second I saw the whole thing clearly. Sloane had not needed to forge anything. She had not needed to hide a letter or steal a phone. She had done something simpler and uglier. She gave Grant a story where he could be innocent, and he bought it because guilt was expensive. Thomas reached toward a small wooden box on the side table. The nurse helped him lift it. I wrote you a letter, he said to me. 3 years ago. I never sent it. He held out the box. I did not take it right away. My hands were cold. Inside that box was probably pain with better handwriting. I'm not sure I want it, I said. Fair, Thomas whispered. That made me laugh once. A tiny broken sound. Noah looked up. Is he funny? Jenna said, accidentally. Thomas smiled. Then his eyes filled. I am not asking you to forgive me, he said. I am asking that this boy not inherit our silence. There it was. The thing under the china, the turkey, the pearls, the last name. Silence. Not one person's lie. A whole family's talent. I took the box. It was heavier than it looked. Grant took one step toward Noah. Can I? No, I said. He stopped. I wasn't asking to take him. I know. I just wanted to meet him. I looked at him then. Really looked. The man I had loved was still in there somewhere, behind the panic and shame. That was annoying. I preferred my villains fully assembled. You do not get to meet him in the same room where you denied him, I said. Grant's face folded. Noah set the magnifying glass down very carefully. Mommy, he said, can we have pie? Of course. A family dynasty was collapsing and my son wanted pie. Honestly, relatable. I took his hand. Yes, I said, but not here. We made it back to the dining room before Sloane finally cracked. Not shattered. Cracked. There is a difference. Shattering is loud and honest. Cracking is what polished people do when they are trying to stay decorative while the wall splits behind them. Eleanor had sent one of the house staff for a broom, but nobody had cleaned the plate yet. The broken china still lay across the floor, cranberry sauce drying on white fragments, green beans looking deeply uncomfortable with their role in family history. Noah pointed at the turkey. Is that the big chicken? Jenna said. Spiritually, yes. I squeezed Noah's hand. Grant stood near the sideboard with his face gray and his hands hanging uselessly at his sides. He kept looking at Noah and then away, like eye contact might require paperwork. Sloane folded her arms. This has gone far enough, she said. I almost admired the confidence. Truly, some women can look at a 4-year-old with their husband's childhood face and still choose denial. That takes core strength. Evil Pallades, maybe. Eleanor turned toward her. Enough? Sloane's voice softened instantly. Eleanor, I know this is emotional, but we need to be rational. Emily appears after years of silence with a child and a story. On Thanksgiving, when Thomas is vulnerable. I received Thomas's letter, I said. You chose to come. Yes, I said. I also chose deodorant this morning. Not every choice is a conspiracy. Jenna coughed into her fist. Sloane ignored me. This family has assets, Emily. A name, a legacy. You cannot blame us for asking questions. There it was. Money, the ugly word dressed in pearls. I looked at the table. The candles were still burning. Someone's wine glass sat half full. A napkin had fallen onto a chair. Small, stupid things. Life's little witnesses. I came here because a sick man asked me to, I said. If I wanted your assets, Sloane, I would have hired a lawyer 4 years ago instead of buying diapers with coupons and pretending store-brand wipes were a lifestyle choice. Grant flinched. Good, Sloane's eyes flashed. You expect us to believe you wanted nothing? No, I said. I expect you to understand I wanted a father for my son before I ever wanted a check. Then Grant taught me to lower my expectations. Eleanor inhaled. Grant whispered, Emily. I turned on him. No, don't make my name soft right now. He closed his mouth. That felt better than it should have. Sloane stepped toward Grant. You remember what she was like. She was emotional. She was desperate. You told me she couldn't let go. I was pregnant, I said. Desperate would have been seasonally appropriate. Jenna murmured, very on brand. Grant looked at Sloane. You told me she would say that. Sloane's face hardened. Because she did. You told me not to call her back. I told you not to be manipulated. You told me if I answered she would trap me. Sloane laughed, but it shook at the edges. And look where we are. I bent down and picked up one large piece of broken plate from the edge of the mess, careful to avoid the sharp side. It had cranberry sauce smeared across a painted blue flower. I placed it on the table on top of a folded linen napkin. Everyone watched me like I had pulled a weapon. Maybe I had. This, I said, touching the fragment, is what you all care about. The break, the noise, the embarrassment. My hand shook. I hated that it shook, so I flattened it on the table. But Noah and I lived in the part after the sound, the sweeping, the cuts you find later, the little pieces that show up under furniture months after you thought the floor was clean. No one spoke, even Sloane, especially Sloane. Grant's eyes were wet now. I did not look directly at them. His tears had the bad habit of asking to be centered. I heard her, Grant said. The room shifted. Sloane went still. Eleanor's face drained. Grant swallowed hard. That night, Emily told me she was pregnant. I heard her. A tiny sound escaped Eleanor. Not quite a sob. Something older. Sloane turned on him. Grant, he looked at me, wrecked. I didn't believe you. I know. I wanted not to. That was the first honest thing he had said all night. It landed in me with less satisfaction than I expected. Maybe because honesty is not a refund. I told myself you were trying to stop me, he said. Sloane said. I lifted one hand. Don't. His mouth closed. She gave you a lie, I said. You gave it a home. Sloane's face flushed. Grant looked like I had slapped him. I didn't need to. Eleanor did, not dramatically, not like a soap opera. She crossed the space between them and struck him once across the face with a trembling hand. The sound was small, the silence after it was not. Grant did not move. Eleanor's hand dropped to her side. You let a woman carry your child alone, she said. Her voice broke. You let my grandson grow up outside this house because believing her was inconvenient. Sloane snapped. Your grandson? You don't even have proof. Eleanor turned slowly. For the first time that night, she looked every inch the woman who had ruled that house for 40 years. I have eyes, she said. Proof will come on paper. Shame arrived first. Sloane recoiled. Noah tugged my sleeve. Mommy, are we in trouble? I crouched in front of him, right there beside the broken plate and the dying candles. No, baby, I said. We are leaving trouble. He considered this. Can trouble have pie? Jenna whispered. Not tonight, buddy. Eleanor looked at me then. The old Eleanor would have asked what I wanted quietly, privately, safely. This Eleanor spoke in front of every Whitmore at the table. Tell me what my son owes yours. I stood with Noah's hand in mine. Time, I said. Money, yes. Accountability, absolutely. But mostly time he doesn't get to rush just because guilt found him late. Grant nodded once, like the words hurt, and he knew they were supposed to. Sloane's chair scraped back. I will not sit here and be insulted. Jenna looked at the empty chair. Technically, you're standing now. Sloane shot her a look and stormed toward the front hall. No one followed. That was her first real punishment. Not the loss of Grant. Not yet. The loss of an audience. The DNA test happened 2 weeks later in a clinic in Atlanta with beige walls, plastic plants, and a receptionist who kept calling Grant Mr. Whitfield. I did not correct her. Neither did he. Petty? Yes. Healing? Also yes. Grant sat across from me in the waiting room wearing a navy sweater in the face of a man learning that regret does not make chairs comfortable. Noah sat beside Jenna on the floor, building a crooked tower out of wooden blocks the clinic had probably purchased during the Clinton administration. Is that man still sad? Noah whispered. Jenna looked at Grant, then at me. That man is learning, she said. Noah nodded. Learning is hard. Grant's eyes filled. I looked away. Not because I was cruel, because I had spent years translating his pain into permission, and I was done working that job for free. The test itself took less than 5 minutes. A cheek swab. A signature. A tiny plastic tube. It was almost offensive how small the procedure was compared to the wreckage around it. 4 years of absence, denial, shame, and silence reduced to cotton on a stick. Noah made a face when the nurse swabbed his cheek. That toothbrush is wrong, he told her. She laughed. Fair criticism. Grant smiled at him without meaning to. Noah saw it and hid behind my leg. Grant's smile died, but he did not step closer. That mattered. Small things matter when trust has to crawl back on broken knees. The results came 6 days later. 99.9998%. I stared at the email in my kitchen while Noah ate peanut butter toast shaped vaguely like a dinosaur because I had used a cookie cutter, and then immediately regretted setting that standard for breakfast. Jenna read the number over my shoulder. Well, she said. Science has entered the chat. I laughed, then cried, then got angry at myself for crying because nothing had changed and everything had changed. Grant was Noah's father. Grant had always been Noah's father. The test did not create the truth. It only made the truth harder for cowards to insult. Eleanor called that afternoon. I almost let it go to voicemail. Then I answered, because growth is apparently doing things you hate with reasonable posture. Emily, she said. Her voice sounded older than it had at Thanksgiving. We received the results. Yes. I am sorry. I leaned against the counter. There was a glob of peanut butter on my sleeve. I scraped it off with my fingernail because there's no emotional milestone motherhood cannot decorate with condiments. I know, I said. I should have asked questions years ago. You didn't know? No, she said, but I knew my son was capable of comfort over courage. I called it sensitivity because it sounded nicer. That one landed. I did not know what to do with an Eleanor who told the truth without polishing it first. She continued. Thomas has revised his estate documents. A trust will be established for Noah's education and health, separate from Grant, separate from us if that is what you prefer. Your attorney can review everything. My attorney will, of course. A pause. Then she said, May I see him? I looked into the living room. Noah was making a toy triceratops apologize to a fire truck. No, I said. Silence. I closed my eyes. Not because I doubted the answer, because saying no to an old woman who had just found her grandson still made me feel like I had swallowed a stone. Human feelings are inconvenient. They do not respect legal clarity. Not yet, I added. Eleanor breathed out. I understand. You don't get grandmother privileges just because biology arrived late. I know. That answer surprised me, so much that I checked the phone screen to make sure I was talking to the right woman. Grant did not fight the parenting plan. That was new too. My lawyer, Priya Malcolm, had a calm face and the moral energy of a locked filing cabinet. She arranged everything with Grant's attorney, child support backdated where possible, medical coverage, a structured introduction plan through a family therapist, no unsupervised visits until Noah was comfortable, no surprise appearances, no calling himself dad unless Noah chose it. Grant signed. I watched him do it in Priya's office. His hand shook when he reached the line about gradual relationship building. Good. Some signatures should tremble. I want to do this right, he said. I looked at the pen in his hand. You had a chance to do right when it was hard, I said. Now you're doing right because everyone knows. He nodded. No defense. That did not fix anything, but it was less exhausting than arguing with a wall in a tailored coat. Sloane lasted 12 days after the DNA result. Grant filed for separation from her. Eleanor removed her from the Foundation's Thanksgiving donor list, which sounded small until Jenna explained that in Charleston society, being removed from a list was basically being pushed off a balcony with manners. Sloane called me once. I answered by accident because Noah had been playing with my phone and I thought it was his preschool. Emily, she said, cold as a silver spoon. I held the phone away and stared at it, then put it back to my ear. Sloane, how's unemployment from other people's respect treating you? She inhaled sharply. You think you won? No, I said. I think my son exists. You were the one treating that like a competition. She said Grant had been miserable with me. She said he would have left anyway. She said I had trapped him with a child. I listened while unloading the dishwasher because if a woman is going to insult me, I might as well be productive. When she finished, I said, Sloane, you spent 4 years standing in front of a door that was already open. He chose you because you made him feel innocent. That's not love, that's customer service. Then I hung up. My hands shook afterward. I dropped a spoon into the sink, and it clanged so loudly Noah yelled, Mommy, did the spoon fall down? Yes, I called back. Is it okay? I looked at the phone, then at the spoon. No, I said softly, but it will be. Thomas died in January. Eleanor called me herself. I sat on the kitchen floor after, one hand over my mouth, because grief is rude and does not care whether you have forgiven someone enough to mourn them cleanly. Noah came over and put a dinosaur sticker on my knee. For sad, he said. I left it there all day. 6 months after Thanksgiving, Eleanor came to Atlanta and asked permission before ringing my doorbell. That is not poetic exaggeration. She texted from her car, I am outside. May I come to the door? I stared at the message for almost a full minute. Jenna, who was sitting at my kitchen table helping me assemble tiny bookshelves, leaned over and read it upside down. Well, she said. Look at that. A Whitmore discovered consent. Don't be mean. I said it with growth. Noah was in the living room wearing a paper crown from preschool and explaining to a stuffed rabbit that trains have rules. I looked at him, then at my phone. My thumb hovered. I hated that a text could make my chest tight. I hated that part of me still expected Eleanor to walk in and rearrange the air. Then I typed, yes, please wait after you ring. Jenna nodded. Boundaries. Very sexy, emotionally, I mean. Eleanor rang once, then waited. Noah looked up. Is it the package man? No, I said. It's Miss Eleanor. He frowned. We had not started with Grandma. I would not give adults titles they had not earned just because their blood test came with a high percentage. The plate lady? He asked. Jenna choked on her coffee. I closed my eyes. Yes, I said. The plate lady. When I opened the door, Eleanor stood on my porch in a pale blue coat, holding a flat-wrapped box with both hands. She looked smaller outside her Charleston house, less like a portrait, more like a woman who had driven 5 hours rehearsing apologies and still did not trust any of them. Hello, Emily, she said. Hello. She looked past me, then stopped herself from searching for Noah too quickly. Another small thing. Another sign she had been practicing. I brought something, she said. If it's a turkey, we're not ready. Her mouth twitched. No, I learned my lesson about carrying plates near your son. I almost smiled. Almost. I let her in. My apartment was not Whitmore grand. It was a 2-bedroom rental with warm lamps, cheap rugs, books stacked on the floor, and one kitchen drawer that opened smoothly because I refused to enter another era of drawer-based oppression. It smelled like crayons, coffee, and the blueberry muffins I had burned on the bottom but frosted anyway. Motherhood teaches creative denial. Noah stood near the couch, watching Eleanor. She crouched, slowly, leaving space between them. Hello, Noah. Hi. I remember you like dinosaurs. He considered her suspiciously. Most people know that. Jenna muttered, he's not wrong. Eleanor smiled, fair. Noah pointed at the box. Is that a dinosaur? No, she said. It's something I broke. That caught him. He came closer. Eleanor set the box on the coffee table and looked at me. May I? I nodded. She unwrapped the paper carefully. Inside was the Thanksgiving plate, or what used to be the Thanksgiving plate. It had been repaired but not hidden. The cracks ran through the white china in thin lines of gold, across the painted blue flowers, through the rim, down the center where the plate had split almost in half. Kintsugi. I had seen pieces like it in museum collections. Broken things repaired with gold so the damage became part of the object, not a shameful secret under glue. My throat closed. Noah leaned over it. It has lightning. Eleanor's eyes filled. Yes. Did you fix it? Someone help me. Why is it gold? She looked at me then. Not over me, at me. Because some things do not go back to what they were, she said. But they can still hold something. The room went quiet, not stiff this time. Soft. Annoyingly soft. I looked away first because I did not want Eleanor Whitmore to see my face folding. There was a sticker stuck to the side of the coffee table. A cartoon turtle. I focused on that like it had been placed there by the emotional survival department. I don't know if I forgive you, I said. My voice sounded rough. Eleanor nodded. I did not come to collect forgiveness. Good. I'm not running a pickup window. Jenna whispered. Excellent branding. Eleanor smiled through tears. I came, she said, to ask what place I may have, if any. That was the difference. The old Whitmores announced. This one asked. Noah poked the air above the plate without touching it. Can it still hold cookies? I laughed then. I couldn't help it. Eleanor laughed too, a shaky little thing that did not know where to land. Yes, she said. I believe it can. I imagined the old me hearing that laugh and softening too fast, opening the door too wide, handing everyone a roll because biology had finally apologized with stationery and trust documents. But the woman I had become knew better. You can visit, I said, once a month at first, here. Or at the park. You ask before gifts. You don't speak badly about Grant or Sloane around him. You don't make promises you haven't earned. Eleanor listened without interrupting. You don't call yourself grandma unless he does. Her mouth trembled. All right, she said. Noah looked up. Can I call you plate lady? Jenna made a sound like she had been shot. Eleanor pressed her lips together, fighting a smile. If your mother allows it. Noah looked at me. I sighed. Temporarily. Okay, plate lady, he said. Do you want to see my trains? Eleanor looked at me first. I nodded. She followed him into the living room, like someone entering a church after years of standing outside criticizing the architecture. Grant saw Noah twice a month by then at the family therapy center. The first time, Noah called him the man with my eyebrows. Grant cried in his car afterward. I know because the therapist told me he needed a few minutes before driving. I did not comfort him. I did not mock him either. That was my personal growth. Very mature. Extremely boring. By summer, Grant could sit with Noah for an hour without trying to force closeness. He learned to bring plain crackers, not the fancy rosemary ones Sloane used to buy. He learned Noah hated surprise hugs. He learned that showing up on time mattered more than saying sorry with expensive shoes. He asked me once, outside the therapy center, if I thought Noah would ever call him Dad. I watched Noah inside the lobby trying to put a sticker on his own forehead. I don't know, I said. That belongs to Noah. Grant nodded. For once, he did not ask me to make the answer easier. I opened the little plate reading room in September. Not with Whitmore money alone. I used my savings, a small arts grant, and the legal support Noah was owed. It was a children's reading space behind a community arts center in Atlanta, with mismatched chairs, low shelves, soft rugs, and Saturday story hours for kids whose parents needed somewhere warm to sit and breathe. On the highest shelf, behind glass, I placed the repaired plate. Noah told every child who asked, that's the plate my plate lady broke when she saw my face. Not exactly the museum label I would have written. Better, probably. On opening day, Eleanor came and sat in the back row. She did not make a speech. She did not bring reporters. She handed out juice boxes after asking me where they went. Grant stood near the doorway for part of it, holding a box of donated books. He did not step into my life like a husband. He stood where he belonged, at the edge, learning. Noah ran past him with 2 picture books and shouted, Grant, look, this dragon has your mad eyebrows. Grant laughed. A real laugh. It hurt a little. It healed nothing fully. Both can be true. That evening, after everyone left, I stood in the reading room alone. The gold lines on the plate caught the lamplight. For a second, it looked less like damage and more like a map. I thought about the woman I had been on that kitchen floor 4 years earlier, holding a pregnancy test and waiting for a man to believe me. I wanted to go back and sit beside her. Not to tell her everything would be fine. People say that when they are too lazy to be honest. I would tell her, you will still break, but you will not spill forever. Noah called from the doorway. Mommy, are we going home? I turned off the lamp. Yes, I said. He slipped his hand into mine. The plate never became whole again. Neither did I. But one of us learned to hold light through the cracks. And for now, that was enough. A year after the plate broke, Noah asked Eleanor if he could call her grandma. He did it at a park in Atlanta while eating a popsicle that was melting down his wrist like a crime scene. No ceremony, no swelling music, just a 4-year-old sitting on a bench, licking blue raspberry off his thumb and saying, Plate lady is a long name. Can I say grandma now? Eleanor froze. I saw her grip the edge of the bench. The old Eleanor might have cried loudly or reached for him too fast or thanked God in a way that made the moment about her. This Eleanor looked at me first. I nodded once, Then she looked back at Noah. I would like that very much, she said. Noah nodded. Okay. Then he handed her his sticky popsicle stick like a royal decree. That was how she became Grandma. Sticky, awkward, burned. Grant took longer. He kept showing up. That was the only miracle I trusted from him. Not speeches. Not flowers. Not late-night texts about regret, which he learned quickly not to send unless he wanted my lawyer to develop new hobbies. He came to therapy. He learned Noah's routines. He stopped flinching when Noah introduced him as Grant. One Saturday, Noah fell asleep against him during a supervised movie afternoon at the family center. The therapist sent me a photo afterward, with my permission. Grant was sitting perfectly still, one arm around Noah, crying silently while a cartoon raccoon danced on the screen in front of them. I stared at the photo longer than I should have. Then I put my phone down and folded laundry. That sounds cold. It wasn't. It was survival with clean towels. Sloane left Charleston by spring. Nobody told me directly, but Charleston gossip travels faster than weather and with more confidence. She moved to Palm Beach, according to Marjorie, who somehow got my number and began sending me updates like a benevolent intelligence agency in pearls. Sloane remarried within 8 months. Jenna said, "Some people collect husbands like seasonal candles." I said, "Be kind." She said, "I am." I didn't mention the scent. I never saw Sloane again. I thought that would feel bigger. It didn't. Some villains shrink when you stop building your life around their shadow. The little plate reading room survived its first year. Barely. The roof leaked once. A toddler colored inside 3 donated books with red marker. A donor asked if our mission could be more upscale, and I stared at him until he donated enough money to leave with dignity. Noah started kindergarten. He wore a backpack too big for his body and refused to let me walk him all the way to the classroom because, according to him, I have legs and a schedule. I cried in the parking lot. Not elegantly. A woman in a minivan saw me and handed me a tissue through her window without saying anything. Mothers are a secret emergency service. Grant came to Noah's school play that winter. He sat 3 rows behind me, beside Eleanor. Noah played a tree. Not a speaking tree. Just a tree with construction paper leaves taped to his shirt. Afterward, Noah ran to me first. Then he looked at Grant and waved. Grant waved back. He did not push. He did not say, "Come here." He just stood there, holding a bouquet of grocery store flowers because Noah had once said real actors got flowers. Noah walked over and took them. "Thanks, Grant." Grant smiled. "You are a very strong tree." "I know." Eleanor laughed into her glove. I stood a few feet away, feeling something loosen and ache at the same time. That was the thing about rebuilding after betrayal. People think healing means the pain leaves. Sometimes healing means the pain stops driving. It can sit in the back seat, muttering occasionally, while you keep both hands on the wheel. On the 2nd anniversary of Thomas's death, Eleanor brought a box of his books to the little plate reading room. Inside one of them, I found a letter addressed to Noah. Not to me. To Noah. Thomas had written it before he died in the same shaky blue ink. "Your mother told the truth when it cost her everything. Remember that, when truth costs you something." I read it twice. Then I put it in a folder for Noah when he was older. Some inheritances should wait until the heart has shelves. That night, I locked up the reading room after story hour. Noah was asleep in the back seat, his cheek pressed against his dinosaur pillow, mouth open, one hand resting near his left ear. I sat in the driver's seat for a moment and watched the rain blur the streetlights. 4 years ago, I thought Grant not believing me had stolen the truth. It hadn't. The truth had stayed with me the whole time. In doctor's appointments, in grocery aisles, in Noah's laugh, in the blank line on the birth certificate that never meant empty, in the broken plate on the shelf shining under a small lamp. I started the car. Noah stirred. "Mommy?" "Yes, baby. Are we home?" I looked through the windshield at the wet Atlanta street, at the little reading room behind us, at the life I had built from cracks nobody else wanted to admit were there. "Almost," I said. And for the first time, that word did not feel like waiting. It felt like arriving.